Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. I'm Celine, and this is Shaq with me. We're very pleased to have you today. Thank you for attending, and we'll start the session. So today we're going to talk about are you ready to go global? The smart way to scale your e-commerce business. So we're going to host this session, Shaq and I. My name is Celine. I'm part of the Multiply team. I work in marketing and partnership for Multiply. We're a repricing solution, and we will have some time to discuss that a little bit later today. I've been working in e-commerce for the past 10 years, and I've been working on international market as well. And I'm really excited to be sharing this webinar with Shaq. Shaq, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Shaq or Shaquille. I'm a partner development manager at Taxually. I've been within the e-commerce space for almost the same amount of time as Celine. I started back in 2019 when it came to doing working for a marketplace, and since then I've gone through the various stages of different suppliers and products as well. So it's been a fun journey. As Celine said, we're here to talk about going global and what the barriers to entry are and what you can do to basically ensure potential success on international marketplaces as you scale your business.
I also want to mention that you have access to the chat, so please feel free to ask any question in the chat. You can ask them during the presentation. We are happy to have a little break and discuss it, or there will be time at the end of the webinar to ask your questions as well. So we'll stay a little bit later to make sure that all your questions are answered. Just to kick off, we asked sellers why don't they expand faster on international markets, and here are some of the things that they've been telling us. So we don't trust our pricing abroad. Every marketplace works differently. We don't see the true margin impact. We can't manage it manually. And actually we have a little poll if you want to participate, where you are able to let us know what is blocking you from expanding faster. And hopefully we'll be able to discuss about these blockers. But overall, what I would say is that the blocker isn't really demand or isn't really seeing the necessity, but it's complexity. And so that's one thing that I think both from a pricing perspective, but also from a tax and compliance perspective, it's something that Shaq and I will discuss today, because complexity seems to be one of the biggest blockers in order to expand internationally. So I can see in the chat I haven't started yet. So obviously you're also looking for a framework or a roadmap to start expanding, and this is what we will discuss today. Before going into this kind of framework, Shaq, do you want to mention something? Sorry.
I was just it was just an observation. I mean, the point number 3, every marketplace works differently. I mean, that is ultimately something that happens in the world in general. Like you go to a store, it's going to be different if you go to like a Carrefour or an Auchan or Tesco, right? Where the products are laid, it's all going to be different. It's a different experience, but that should not necessarily stop you overall, right? Especially when you look at, as Celine will talk about later, the different marketplaces that are out there. You have some local winners that are dominating over some of the multinational or international players out there who are also operating in those markets. So you need to find the right balance.
Yes, and I think that's very true, including if you don't expand internationally, but including if you expand locally, right? Because you also have this possibility of trying to stay in your own country, but expanding to other marketplaces. And you will have to manage complexity at this point because other marketplaces might function differently. So I think that's very true both locally and internationally. And it's something that we will probably go through today. Before we start deep diving into the roadmap, Shaq, do you want to give us a little overview on what the opportunity is?
Yeah. So, the whole point of Taxually is basically to simplify your international expansion. So obviously, if you're working or selling, let's use Amazon as a marketplace, right? Your home market is France, but you want to expand into Germany or Poland, and you're going to be storing goods in multiple countries. At that point, you basically have a VAT obligation, and you need to register for local VAT numbers, which you can do through a platform like Taxually. What we do is we deal with the registration, and then through our platform, you can also do the filing. So you avoid any challenges or any problems when it comes to audits by tax authorities, especially when you hit certain thresholds. So you can continuously manage this and not have to deal with all these compliance issues later on. The other thing to note here is that registration takes time. So, if you're planning to launch in a market, let's say in Q2, you should have started the process of that registration in Q1 the same year, or even Q4 of the previous year, just so that you have everything set out for you as you plan your expansion strategies. I mean, the other thing we look at in particular is, why the UK and EU markets as well. Where most of us are based within the EU, and there are players that operate locally as well as internationally, or do both. So this is where tax compliance also becomes a challenge for you. When we talk about the total market share, that what you see here is, if you combine the UK and the EU, you've got a huge market in terms of consumers. We're talking about over 500 million people, right? And if you look at the market as a whole, some of the biggest e-commerce markets within Europe are Germany, France, and the UK. And then you've got countries like Poland, which are also dominating and growing rapidly. So you want to expand your reach to those markets and to those consumers. What's interesting to note is, local platforms, or even in Germany or France, once you're on Amazon, you create local visibility, and then you have to deal with some kind of localization as well. The penetration is also hugely important. You're looking at 70% or more people who are actually shopping online nowadays, as opposed to 10, 15, 20 years ago. Although we're past it for the most part, but COVID really changed the way that we deal when it comes to e-commerce. And then following COVID within Europe, we had that 2021 implemented, which is why companies like Taxually were born, to basically help with that. What's also interesting to note is that annually there is continuous growth when it comes to e-commerce and expanding to other markets. So you can see in the numbers here, it's a 15% year-on-year growth rate overall. And then the infrastructure, you've got Multiply as a repricing tool that can help. You've got other tools out there, and you've got a huge mature logistics infrastructure that has been set up within Europe for that sort of expansion as well. So, as I touched on, I mean, there are multiple benefits when it comes to expanding internationally. So, you can have potential higher margins, especially as the very first slide that you saw when it came to barriers to entry, or what people look at. Different marketplaces operate differently, but then again, there are potentials for higher margins. Some marketplaces charge lower commissions, some marketplaces charge higher commissions, but then there's also the fact that when you move into new marketplaces, you look at different strategies, different marketing strategies. So you're creating your brand awareness as well. Another key topic here is risk diversification. So entering multiple markets means that you're spreading your risk. You're adding multiple markets because you might be saturated in your home market. So it's time to expand to continue this growth, right? So this is where Multiply can also help you analyze and find out what's the best route to market for you. Another thing, seasonal perks. This is obvious everywhere, right? Marketplaces run their own promotions throughout the year. So if we talk about Amazon, you've got Prime Days, you've got the Christmas sales. If you talk about local players, they have their own promotional campaigns, which are actually bigger in their local markets than some of the other players. There's also cultural holidays. So, I live in Poland right now, so there are days like grandparents' days. So if you have products which appeal to, let's say, an older generation or people who have grandkids, they'll be buying products for those. So, that's something else to take into account. I already touched on the brand recognition, so building your brand internationally, that's a no-brainer. And then again, similar to the seasonal peaks, the cultural trends, as I said, different buying habits, different cultural holidays, and so on. So these are things that help you build, but it's also about understanding the let's say barriers to entry, but they shouldn't be barriers. Think of them as challenges as to how you can overcome what you can do and the way you would see entering a new market or even looking at what options are out there.
I think it's interesting that in the previous slide you were talking about the UK, because obviously it's been quite different, or we can assume that it's been quite different since Brexit, right? So do you see that as like tax and compliance? Is it a market that is very difficult to enter for a European seller?
No, it's not. It's definitely not a market that's difficult to enter as a European seller. I mean, it's the same way that a UK company would have to enter Germany or even if you're selling to France. There are certain barriers to entry, but those are easily dealt with. So if you're talking about, we talk about Amazon a lot, right? So in order to sell into the UK, if you store your goods into the UK, it's much easier. Yes, there are certain things that you'll need to go through, so dealing with customs and so on, which is not something that we would help with, but we have partners that can help with that. But once you have the products in the country, you're getting it to the client and the consumer quicker, faster, without any delays, without it sitting in customs, and you're avoiding that entire trap there, right? So that's, and then of course the VAT compliance side of things, we can help you get your VAT number. You don't have to set up a company in the UK in order to sell in the UK, right? That's an important thing to note. And then again, like I said, we use Amazon as an example here. Using FBA would actually help that as well along the way.
Yeah, so the UK is still a very good market to expand. And so now we're gonna go through all the key points, or like the key steps if you want to expand internationally, and our advices. The very first advice that we want to give is to get a feed manager. So neither Multiply nor Taxually is doing a feed manager, so that's a very genuine tips, but the feed manager will be very key for your international expansion, because as you start multiplying marketplaces and countries, your data management and your product data is going to become quite complex. And so it's very important that you get a software that will help you automate and support this complexity in order to really drive your growth. A feed manager will help you streamline listing, make updates, and mostly reduce manual error. And so it will be quite important that as you start having lots of markets, you have one centralized platform where you can manage your listings. Now, once you have your listing kind of managed and connected, etc., you're able to start defining where you want to go next. And I think that's one of the key questions, right? Like you want to go. So let's say you're in Amazon in Italy and you want to understand if it's better to go to Germany or if it's better to go to the UK and which marketplace, etc. So the very first tip that we have is to start looking at Amazon. Because obviously Amazon is probably the biggest. It has also a lot of marketplaces across Europe. So there is a big opportunity in tapping into the Amazon marketplaces. And we also wanted to highlight their pan-EU model that they started, I think it's about a year ago, I want to say, maybe a little bit more. And pan-EU basically is a model where they will help you sell across European markets. So instead of having to deal with each Amazon country, you will be able to send your product to one Amazon warehouse, and they will be managing the shipping across their different warehouses across Europe, depending on where the demand is and where you're selling your product. So it will really, really help you reduce the cost, deliver faster, reach more customer. And PanEU is a very strong program to keep in mind. The only thing that is required when you use PanEU, and Shaq will probably talk a little bit about that maybe later, or I don't know if you want to say something right now, Shaq, but the only thing that you will need is to be registered, is to have your VAT registered in the country where you are expanding in the PanEU. I don't know if Shaq, you want to add something to that.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right about that. You know, the PanEU program is designed so that you can expand faster into multiple markets through Amazon, right? So as Celine said, the most important thing, if you want to be a part of this, is to have your VAT numbers across the various markets that you want to expand into. It also helps you, once you have your VAT number in various countries, you can also expand to other marketplaces. You're not just limited to Amazon, but you're starting your journey through there. And then let's say you have different products which actually sell better on a different marketplace. The fact that you've already done the groundwork and are already starting there, you can actually easily switch onto a local player. For example, if we're talking about France, you could go onto like Cdiscount or La Redoute or something like that, based off of your product line, if it matches that marketplace better, right? I think also with the PanEU in general, as Celine said, you've got access to FBA, and they're moving the products to the various locations for you based on what you want to do. So that also eases up or alleviates some of the pain that you'd have to deal with when it comes to shipping to multiple locations. You're just shipping to one, and then it's being distributed. So definitely worth the money behind it.
And Amazon is the obvious one. I think that most of the sellers are already on Amazon, so you already know the system, you already know the model. So it's quite obvious that expanding into other Amazon countries is a good first step to start in a new market. The second one is. Sorry.
I was just going to say, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the statistics, I think Amazon is the biggest marketplace in Germany, in France, in the UK. Although there are local players there as well, those are the three biggest markets in terms of e-commerce within Europe, and Amazon is leading the way there. Whereas in the Netherlands, you'll have bol.com. I've already touched on Poland in terms of Allegro, but then in France, there are a lot of marketplaces in France as well, but Amazon still leads the way.
And I think, it's a good point, is that if you tap into other Amazon countries like France, you get access to lots of customers, and you're also able to kind of like test demand, test competition. You already know the tool, but you have access to another kind of customer, and you can test the local demand for your product before expanding into other marketplaces in this country. So it's a very good first step, I think, to expand. And then as we were saying, then you've got major European marketplaces. So similarly to Amazon, maybe slightly less, less big. You've got very big marketplaces that are across Europe. And so it's quite obvious that if you're already on Mano Mano, you might expand to another Mano Mano country. These marketplaces also really tend to try to expand internationally themselves. So if you look at Kaufland, for example, in the past, they were mostly in Germany and in Eastern countries. And this summer, they've opened in France and Italy. So they are also trying to tap into new markets. Which can be also an added value for you, because they might decrease the commission, the fees, in order for you to get into the platform into this country. So I think it's important to look at Europe opportunity on the European marketplaces like that. And then finally, we quickly mentioned it, but you have local marketplaces. So once you're in Amazon, you've tested the demand, then you expand to other European marketplaces, then you can start looking at local marketplaces. Jacques mentioned La Redoute, and you have many different marketplaces that might not be across a lot of countries, but have actually quite a big weight in one country. So if you're looking at EMAG is very big in Eastern countries. If you're looking at Conforama in France, for example, so you have all these marketplaces that will not have the international spectrum, but will have lots of customers and will be a very good growth opportunity. So if I summarize, what we recommend is get a feed manager to make sure that your listings are up to date, then start looking at Amazon because that's easy, that's obvious, and that's a good way to test a new country. Then look at European marketplaces, and finally you can tap into local marketplaces. I don't know if Jacques, you want to add?
Yeah,
Yes?
I have a question actually. So I was curious, when it comes to looking at the other marketplaces, especially from the Multiply perspective, are you able to do a comparison in terms of the products and what they're doing in the other markets? So let's take France as an example, right? Obviously you're selling on Amazon, so using Multiply, what would it show me if I wanted to look at Fnac, La Redoute, Carrefour, or even Cdiscount? What would I see on that front?
So you're a seller and you sell the same product on multiple marketplaces and you want to compare? Yes. So
Yeah.
one of the good things with Multiply is that you will really be able to tailor your strategy. So if you want to look at, let's say you have one big, bestseller SKU, but that's very price sensitive, you can tailor your margin depending on how this specific SKU is performing on each marketplace. So you can put, for example, let's say minimum price or maximum price bounds to ensure that you're never going under or over this price on a specific marketplace. If one marketplace is taking like more commission and you get less margin on this marketplace, so you will be able to compare this and then to tailor your pricing strategy depending on that. So yeah. And talking about pricing, well, this is true that it can become a challenge when you start expanding internationally, because every market will behave differently. You will have new competitors that you didn't have in the past. You will have rules, legislation, compliance. We'll talk about it, fees, etc. So pricing is adding complexity when you start expanding internationally. And so it's also adding complexity in terms of what is the pricing strategies that you should use when you expand. One thing that we really recommend is that don't necessarily correlate your prices across all marketplaces and across all countries, because each marketplace in each country will have a very specific demand, competition, commission, fees, shipping fees, etc. So if you start to use the same prices across all your marketplaces and across all your countries, what it will do is that it will start eroding your margin and you will start losing your margin. It will really impact. So it's kind of contradictory, because you might impact your overall revenue because you are reaching to more customers, but your margins might start decreasing. So it's very important not only to look at what is the overall revenue that you're doing, but also like what is the specific margin that you're achieving when you start expanding.
Also, one thing to note is exchange rates, right? Forex, especially
Yes.
in some countries that are not Euro countries, that will be a huge, let's say, change in your strategy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. UK, Sweden, etc. Like you really need to look at the currency and how it's impacting your business. So the recommendation overall is that there is no one price fits all, but you should be able to adapt by channel and by country, and as we said before, even sometimes by SKU, so that you can really tap into the opportunity in terms of margin, not only in terms of like overall number of products that you're selling. And so this is where obviously Multiply comes in. We are a dynamic repricer. So what we do is that we will automatically reprice depending on real-time market condition, competitors' activity, but also your own configuration and setup. So what is the margin that you want to achieve? What are the costs that you want to take into account? What are your minimum prices, etc., your pricing strategies overall. We can update your prices as much as you want, really, depending also on the competition. If the competition is very aggressive, we might reprice a lot. If not, we might reprice less. And really what is at the heart of Multiply is the margin and the profitability. So we're not going to try to win you the buy box over and over by just decreasing your prices. What we are going to do is that we want to win the buy box at the maximum price, always, to keep your margin and to keep your profitability. And we do that across more than 130 marketplaces. So you can really tap into the European market because, as we said before, we have the big Amazon, we have the big one, but we're also very, very strong on other smaller marketplaces, meaning that you will be able to tailor and customize your strategy per marketplaces. This is just a summary of all the marketplaces that we have, 130 overall across Europe, and including some small one on all countries really in Europe. Now, what I want to highlight here is how to use data when you are looking at international expansion. This is also something that Multiply is doing very well by giving you a lot of data and a lot of reporting. There are many things that you can look at when you start expanding internationally. The first one, obviously, is around the buy box and the competition. Who is winning the buy box? Are you winning it? Who is your competition? And how, like, your pricing strategy might, evolve around that. The second thing, I kind of like started to talk about it, but look not only at your revenue, but also at your margin, and look at it by channel. Meaning that don't look at it only at the overall level, but also look at every channel. That's what we were discussing, Shaq, in terms of like how do you compare marketplaces, what is the profitability of each marketplace and of each SKU across all your countries and all your marketplaces. One thing that's very interesting is looking at competition, because as you start expanding, you might start facing new competition. And I think that's where you need to be very clever in terms of what is the strategies that you should use depending on the competition of your country. You might have countries with very strong competition, meaning that you might need more aggressive pricing, whereas on others, you might be able to push your prices a little bit more up, win some margins because you have less competition. So that's something that's very interesting to look at. And then identify pricing limits and identify opportunities. So for example, at Multiply, we have this kind of report that will help you understand, like, okay, on this SKU, on this platform, I am at my maximum price and I still win the buy box. So that's where you can push a little bit further and be like, okay, let's increase the price to see if I keep the buy box and increase my margin at the same time. So I think it's when you think about expanding internationally, it's not a one-off job. It's more a long-term project where you might test, adapt, change. Pricing overall, I think, is something that is should be very dynamic, because the environment is complex and might change. And so it's the same with international expansion, obviously. I'm going to go very, very quickly over this one, just to let you know that on Multiply, you'll have free trial, no engagement. And what we call immediate results is that once you plug Multiply after 24 hours, you should see the results of your repricing. You should see more buy box winning, meaning obviously that hopefully it will bring more sales and more and keep your margin intact. Now, I just want to, before I hand it over to tax, to talk a little bit more about, to Shaq, sorry, to talk a little bit more about taxes. I just want to kind of like summarize like the 3 pillars of cross-border performance, as well as the 3 steps to start selling internationally. So I think that some of the biggest pillars are obviously win the buy box and look at your competitors. That's very crucial if you want to start reaching out to more customers. The second thing, and that's what I was really trying to insist on, is protect your margin. You will have new commissions, you will have new fees, you will have new shipping costs, etc. So be specific when you start building your pricing strategy. Look at your marketplaces strategy and look at your country strategies, and always look at your margins and not only your sales and not only your prices. And the last one is try to think about how you can scale and try to use tools that will help you scale. So we mentioned Feed Manager, and Multiply and Taxually are also part of these tools that will really help you to scale. If you want to summarize a little bit, and then I will hand it over to Shaq, but I think that the 4 kind of like main steps when you start selling abroad is that the very first one, Shaq will talk about it, but register to the VAT, obviously, because without that, you are stuck and you can't expand. And then you can start launching on one marketplace like Amazon, start tailoring your pricing strategies, validate that the demand is here, that you're still in your margin, and then you can expand gradually. I also wanted to share with you a little case study that we've done with one of our customers. So I just put the link in the chat. This is a seller who started to launch across multiple marketplaces and launch across multiple countries, and how Multiply really helped them expand. I won't go into the detail right now, just in the interest of time, but I put the link here and feel free to read through it, because I think it's a very interesting case of what were the challenges that this seller had to face, and how they went over it, including with the help of Multiply, but not only. So that's in terms of sharing the little case study. And now I'll probably hand it over to you, Shaq, but I think that's now time to like go through compliance and tax and the complexity of all of that when you expand.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I could go into lots of detail, but I think that even with what you were saying, Celine, one thing is, and even before you start with the VAT registration and expansion on that front, maybe it's better to look at Multiply in what markets and what the pricing is, what the pricing strategy could be in, let's say, Germany, France, Poland, and then based off of that, where you could see potential, then say, okay, I want to speak to Taxually about expanding into Poland, so I need to get my VAT number for Poland and Germany, because those are the 2 that through Multiply I saw where I have the biggest advantage and potential to grow. So yeah, I'd go with that strategy in one perspective. But then, as I've said multiple times, it's about planning. It's about, when you want to hit the markets. You definitely want to be in there for the Q4 sales. You want to be there for the summer sales. So again, understanding each market, understanding the complexities, understanding the culture, the trends, those are all important factors. And then the VAT compliance. So this is where it becomes complicated. It could be, if you enjoy taxes, it's interesting, but if you don't, it's just a necessary evil that you have to deal with. So, the biggest challenge that we find is in registration for VAT. So it takes a while. It takes time. The other thing is you need to do this so that you can avoid potential penalties, and you will be audited based off your sales, based off what you're doing. We talked about Amazon as well. So if you want to sell into multiple Amazon marketplaces and have fulfillment done in each of those countries, to be prime eligible, right? You need to have the VAT number in those countries as well. In addition to those, like the VAT registration and the compliance side of things, we also offer product compliance and EPR. So those are services that we can offer. Both Celine and I talked about, currency payments. So these are complex areas as well. If you're a UK seller, you're normally dealing with pounds. Then if you're going into Germany, then you've got the euro. If you go into Poland, you've got the Polish zloty. So dealing with the currency exchanges based off of your cost of goods, this can also add additional problems for you. So, dealing with that is important. And then, cultural and language barriers, those are obvious things that you need to understand. So again, Multiply could help. Taxually will make the market accessible based off of the VAT side of things, but you also need to understand what you need to do, where let's say, how to expand on those different marketplaces and markets, and getting the right marketing strategy behind that as well. So, yeah, I mean, as far as Taxually is concerned, we cover over 90 countries at the moment when it comes to, VAT registration and filings. I say VAT, but obviously in the States or in the US, it's called sales tax. So we can help with that if you plan on expanding into the US as well. Our platform processes calculations very quickly, and we've done, I guess now 22,000 or over 22,000 tax registrations and over 20,000 clients that are using our services as well. So the main things to keep in mind are that Taxually is a streamlined VAT registration and filing platform to automate all the work that you would not want to do, or you don't want to outsource to a different company or an accounting firm. You can do it all in-house and then pull the reports for your accounting team or finance teams. EPR and sustainable compliance, I touched on that briefly, but I won't go into much detail. If you're selling in certain markets like Germany or France, there are different requirements for product packaging, for electronics and battery compliance. So you need to look into that. And those are also things that we can support with. And, because of our automation, we can save 50 to 80% in terms of time savings by automating this process for you. So, yeah, I think that's about it on our side. But yeah, we've talked about this multiple times in terms of the customer range that you've got by expanding. You're entering new markets. You're seeing more customers. You're increasing your brand awareness. You're increasing potential profitability of the brand. And with that, there are challenges that you need to deal with. And this is where both ourselves, Taxually, and Multiply can help you navigate those barriers. So, yeah. I think that's it for us, right, Celine?
Yes, I think that's it. Feel free to ask your question in the chat. Hopefully, I think we gave you a good overview of how to expand. I know that at the beginning, someone said that the VAT is one of the biggest barriers for them to sell internationally. So hopefully, Shaq has answered this question. You can also be in touch with us afterwards if you want to know more about Taxually and Multiply. So we have one question in the chat. How should sellers decide which EU marketplace to enter first? Do you want to start, Shaq?
Well, I think, yeah, I can start. I mean, look, guys, the obvious thing here is if you're looking for entering a big market, then Germany was the biggest market within Europe. If you're not selling on Germany at the moment, then that would be the first place to look at, because in terms of consumers that there are a lot. In terms of, let's say, Amazon, it's Amazon's biggest market in Europe. But then it also depends where your home base is, right? If you're a French company expanding and looking to expand, then yeah, Germany would make sense because it's quite close. If you're an American company, for example, perhaps the UK would be an easier market to entry, right? Everything comes down to your understanding of local trends, customs, and what the consumer is all about, right? Germany, there's a lot around in terms of consumers around being environmentally friendly as well, right? So, you know, based off of those cultural norms, you can judge your entry as well, I think. And from a taxually perspective, you know, expanding into various markets, it depends on how quickly you want to enter them. Some countries, that registration takes much longer than in others. So it's just a question of understanding that process as well. What about you? So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, and I was going to ask, probably also look at the competition, I think, on the marketplace and the prices on the marketplace. I think it will give you a rough overview of how aggressive the competition is and how you position yourself on the scale of price with your product. So yeah, I think it's always worth like having a little bit of research in terms of like who is on the market, at what price they are, and if you're able to make it in terms of profitability, you know, facing this competition. Yeah. So okay. Second question: should sellers use different pricing strategies for Amazon versus other marketplaces? Is it dangerous to use the same price across all marketplaces? So I think the second part, I'll probably take this one, but I think the second part is really around, you know, we've discussed it briefly. You know, you could decide to use the same price across all marketplaces, and sometimes we have clients that do for many reasons. But I think really look at, you know, the cost, the fees, the commission, etc., because it can impact your margins on each marketplace. We usually recommend to use different strategies, and actually we have lots of different strategies that are very specific by marketplace. So we will have a different one for Amazon, a different one for Back Market, which has like refurbed products. We'll have specific one for Mano, etc. Because our algorithm know how the marketplace work, how they give the buy box, how often they update the prices, etc. And I think that overall, we also recommend to have a look at your business challenges overall. And that's why we have a full team of experts that is here to help you in order to really understand what is your business need, what is your business challenge, your vision, etc., and how should it apply on each marketplace and on your pricing. Okay, I think that's it for now. In case you have any questions, feel free to email us. Maybe Shak, could you put your email in the chat, and
Sure thing.
we're always here to answer any question that you have. We hope that it was an interesting webinar for you guys, and we hope to hear from you very soon. And thank you, Shak.
Thank you for having me. I think, you know, the most important thing is planning. I think that's all it comes down to. Just plan and create a strategy that works, and you know, your expansion will be great.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, Shak, and thank you, everyone.
Have a great day,
Bye.
everyone. Take care. Bye.